In this video, we want to continue to look at trig equations, but we want to add something to them that we have not really looked at yet. So let's look at what we've kind of already looked at. Let's say we have on 0 to 360 degrees, we want to solve the equation sine of x equals 1/2. Well, if we think of our unit circle and kind of draw a picture to help us think about that, our y coordinate is 1/2. So we get one angle right there, one angle right there. And if we know our unit circle really well, we would know that that is 30 and 150. And we've done a whole bunch of those already. Now let's say we have something like, what happens if the sine of x is 1/3? Well, this is a very similar problem if we draw our picture. But instead of being at 1/2, it's going to be at 1/3, so it's a little bit less. So we know it's going to be a little bit less than 30 and a little bit more than 150, but we don't know what that is exactly. And the problem is 1/3 is not on our unit circle. So what we want to look at today is how do we solve this type of problem when it's not a unit circle value. So we are not going to use our unit circle. Instead, what we are going to use is our calculator. So in this case, we're going to start off on 0 to 360. So first thing you want to do is make sure on your calculator that you get your mode to degrees, since we are in degree mode. If it asks us to do something in radians, then we'll want to solve it in radians. Now, what we're going to do to solve this is we are going to use our inverse. So if we just think, well, when we did this back when we did our triangles, we could say, well, sine is just inverse sine of 0.45. And if we do that on our calculator, we just say inverse sine of 0.45, and we get 26.744. So our angle is 26.744 degrees. However, we're solving it on 0 to 360. So if we think about our unit circle, 0.45 is right there. And the first angle that we just found is 26.744. The problem is on 0 to 360, we have another angle over here that we need to find. And our calculator will not give that to us. So that's why it's important here, one, to draw a picture to help us see where that is. Now, what we're going to use to be able to find this is that we know both of these angles have what we talked about a long time ago, which is the idea of a reference angle. So we know this angle here is also 26.744. So when we want to find this angle, we just have to subtract that from 180. So we can go to our calculator, and after we found our 26, we can then just take 180 minus that angle, and we get 153.256. 153.256. And so now here are our two answers. Now it's important you draw a picture because we are not always going to just subtract from 180. As you think about your angles, if we draw our unit circle, and when we do the calculator, we get this angle here, but our other angle is down here. Let's say we're in tangent or something. Now we're going to have to add that angle to 180. Or if we're over here, we may have to subtract that from 360. So it depends on what it is. It also depends if it's a sine and it's a y coordinate, or is it an x because it's cosine. So let's look at an example. Cosine is negative 0.8. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a picture. So cosine is the x coordinate. So that is going to be right there is my negative 0.8. So my x coordinate, I'm going to get two answers. One is there, one is there. So if I go to my calculator, now you'll notice I am on 2 pi. So that tells me I need to switch to radians. So I'm going to switch my calculator to radians. And I do inverse cosine of negative 0.8. And I get an answer of 2.498. And that would be that angle. Remember, this is pi 3.14. Now, to find my second angle down here, I need to figure out what this angle is here. Now, remember, we're in radians, so I'm going to take pi minus my answer. And that's going to tell me this angle right here is 0.644. And I now need to go that distance past pi. So I come back here and I add pi to that answer, and I get 3.785. And there are my two answers in radians. It's definitely a little bit harder in radians because we're not as comfortable as we are in degrees. Let's try another one. Cosine of 0.35. Once again, we are back to degrees. So to get us started, let's draw a picture to think about where these angles are. Cosine of 0.35 is the x-coordinate. So that's about here. So I have one answer here and one answer there. When I go to my calculator, first I'm going to switch it to degree mode. And I'm going to find that first answer on the calculator. And that first answer is 69.513. So 69.153. That is that answer. Now to find the second angle, and remember I'm 0 to 360, so I want to find that, I am going to take 360 minus that angle, and that's going to give me my answer. So I can go back to my calculator and take 360 minus that angle, and I get 290.487. 290.487. So now there are my two answers. So in all of these questions, what's going to happen is you're going to find your first answer on the calculator. So you're going to need to go to the calculator and you're going to need to use inverse. That's going to give you one answer. Then you're going to have to draw this picture to figure out where is the second angle. Is it the x-coordinate, so it's up and down? Is it a y-coordinate, so it's the horizontal? To then find your second angle. So let's try one more with sine. Sine is negative 0.65. So once again, let's draw our circle. Sine is negative 0.65. So that's going to be a negative y. So that's there. So I have two answers. So if I go to my calculator, some of you might already be anticipating the problem here. I do negative 0.65. And I didn't use the negative sign. There we go. And I get negative 40.54. So I get, my answer is negative 40.541. So that answer that the calculator gave me is this answer. But that's not 0 to 360. So I got to be a little creative here. My first answer is I'm going to have to take 360 minus that. So I'm going to do 360. I'm going to say plus that, so I get, it's already negative. So that gives me 319.458. Now, how do I find my other answer? Well, I know that this angle is that same 40.541 past 180. So I'm going to take 180 plus 40.541. And so I get 220.541. So you can see in doing these, a big part of doing these is drawing the picture and using what comes from the calculator and from your picture to help figure this out. We all know that it really is going to come down to this being 180 if we're in degrees, this is 360, and so you're adding and subtracting from those numbers because it's always those angles back to the x-axis. Now let's say we have something like this. This is about as hard as it can get. 3 cosecant of x equals or minus 7. So if you remember when we did these before, first I'm going to subtract 7, divide by 3. I flip both sides, and then I get sine of x is 3/7. So now in terms of drawing my picture, if we don't know, let's figure it out. 3/7 is 0.42, so that's about, let's say right there. So we have our two answers here and here. When I do my inverse sine of 3/7, I'm going to get my one answer, which is 25.377. That is this answer. Now I need to find my other answer. And this is my 25, so I'm going to take that and subtract it from 180 to get my other answer. So I take 180 minus that answer, and I get 154.623. So in doing these, you're always going to draw a picture. You're going to use the calculator to help you find the answer. And on some of these, such as this one, is the one case where that one answer is not going to be right off the calculator. In most of them, that first answer off the calculator will at least be one answer, and then you just got to find the second. If you have this special case where you have the negative sign, it's going to give you a negative answer, which is not 0 to 360, so you got to do a little bit more work. Now, one thing I do want to mention is if you see something like this, cosine of x is negative 1.47. And I want you to think about the unit circle. And where on the unit circle is the x coordinate negative 1.47? And the answer would be way out here. Our unit circle only goes from -1 to 1. So when you have a number for cosine or sine that is bigger than -1.47, your answer is going to be no solution. Now, that is not true if you have tangent. If you have tangent is -1.47, you can do that on the calculator. So I could do inverse tangent of -1.47, and that's going to give me an answer, -55. But if I try to do cosine of -1.47, I will get an error. So if you have a number for sine and cosine that is bigger than 1, you're going to get an error, and the answer is no solution. If it is for tangent or cotangent or something angle, that will be okay. All right, you are now ready to do the homework. This is section 6.4, and this is Trig Equations 4, and you're doing these with the calculator.